Erica.
Hi, Keisha.
So I wanted to do a video with you today because you're one of my favorite people. And so you're welcome. I wanted to ask, or I guess get the world to know a little bit more about what you do. So where do you live? Where are you from?
Hi, everybody. Erica Thibodeaux. I live in Minnesota, Winona, Minnesota, on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. And Keisha's a great friend. I'm so happy to be here talking with you in front of people about all the fun stuff we talk about counseling behind the scenes. And I am an LPC licensed in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And yeah, been in practice for 7 years.
And your undergrad, what's your undergrad in? Because I think this is interesting about you.
Yes. So my undergrad is in architecture, and I learned the statistic. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I feel like it's like 10% of people who graduate with a degree in architecture go into the counseling field. And it's so interesting because in to study architecture, it takes both sides of the brain. You have to be like creative and problem solving and analytical. And I feel like that's what the skills we're using as counselors,
So interesting. You always know these interesting facts that I don't know about.
Several people went into counseling from my program. And so then I was like really interested in that, that's how I kind of learned about that.
Well,
I looked into it. It was like, wow, what is going on here?
And in general, when you're into something, you'll research it when we talk, and you'll tell me the research side of things. You like that.
I'm in bed at night with 10 tabs open, going down a rabbit hole of information.
I love that.
What I tell my clients not to do.
I get it. I totally get it. Because I'm vegging out. I'm watching silly stuff on TV. That's I get it. Well, so you are an LPC.
Yes.
What is your favorite? Oh, well, no, let's talk about how we know each other. So we are both from Lafayette. And so how did we meet?
So we met in 12-step recovery in the early 2000s and had an amazing group of friends. And we're still friends from that incredible journey of growing together and learning, our own tools and navigating life in our early 20s.
Man, it's so crazy because yes, I was sober for 8 years. You're still sober. How long have you been sober now?
26 years.
Crazy.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yeah. January 2nd is my anniversary. It'll be 27.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's a lifetime. Well, and I know you're part of the reason, I guess, during all that time, I struggled with, am I an alcoholic? Am I not? And you were part of the reason why I started drinking again. You're like, Keisha, you have been questioning this for 8 years or however long, You're like,
yes.
You need to trust yourself. And so our journey together started before that, but we both value similar things about trusting our own awareness. There's so many things that we see eye to eye on when it comes to core values. And I think it started back then.
Absolutely. And I feel like, I don't know, I remember that time. It was there are people in AA who are really bad off alcohol. They're really, and then there's young people that came in that had some questionable experiences and some struggles. But, I just remember with you, it was you were not one of those people that was a lifer, and even me, I'm not an AA lifer. I feel like we have to grow beyond those tools. And one of the reasons that I didn't go straight into becoming a counselor was because when you're in recovery, lots of people go and become counselors. And I was like, I want to be something different. And then in 2010, I was like, what do I really want to do with my life? And what do I really want to be? And I was like, I love helping people and listening. I love hearing their stories, understanding what started their whatever, what is the root of it? And I love sitting around drinking tea with people. And I was like, okay, maybe I should go to grad school to be a counselor.
I love that. That is similar. I think we started our love of that in AA because we would do so many things
Yes,
like that. Those were
yes.
really good times for me. I feel like that's when I started to get really close to women and my relationships with those. I mean, I'm still close to you and Marion from that time period, like
Yes.
deep relationships.
Yes, and I remember, I mean, I feel like your personality was well suited to be a counselor from the beginning. Like I just remember you having those skills. Like I remember this scene, we were both in college, we're sitting out under this tree in front of this coffee shop, and some guy in recovery was like, "Are you and Keisha gonna go over there and talk about your feelings?" And
I don't remember this. This is great.
I was like, "Actually, we are."
Later. I like that. But it was
Yeah.
welcomed in that environment. And I think that it was like I mean, so much of it was like telling all your secrets and like it like laid the foundation for being a therapist.
Oh, totally. And one of the things that I just think in relationships in general now for me, it's so easy to just cut to the chase and get down to like the root causes, or to just start off talking from a really deep place, because when you do go to a lot of 12-step meetings, people show up, relative strangers, and they're sharing from the heart. They're sharing from this deep place, from the beginning, just from the get-go. And that's such an interesting way to spend your time, socially and in mutual support settings, to just like go so deep so fast.
It's interesting. I never thought your brain, you think of things, I think, more broken down sometimes than I do, like these experiences. And I never thought of how just that practice, because we did it a lot weekly, several times a week,
Yeah.
would create that comfort. Because it's true. I like sometimes even in normal hangout sessions, I ask too many intrusive questions because it's like I can't help myself. I'm like, oh,
Yes. Me
people look at me like,
totally. No, I walk away from like a regular dinner party. I'm like, well, they have like five siblings and one of their parents was an alcoholic. Like I'm like, I know the whole thing. 'Cause I'm like, tell me more. And what about this? And like, where were you in the lineup? And blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like, yeah, can't help it sometimes.
it does interest us. I think we truly are curious about that stuff. And it started
Yes.
then. It started at AA. And as
Yes.
we've grown up, I feel like you've been a support for me to go to like invest even deeper in myself when I would question things, or I was like, should I do this? Should I
Mm,
not? And I think I've done the same thing for you, that we just kind of supported each other.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. You're like my go-to. If I am, yeah, if I'm, I mean, you're my go-to for so many things, but absolutely that ability, you never stop seeking the truth. That's what I kind of noticed from you, is like you are so willing to do the work. So what you're asking of people is absolutely stuff you're willing to do, you are doing, you're actively pursuing that inner growth.
It's the same thing, man. That's crazy. And it started back then. Oh, I'll have to think about that more later. So, because it's starting my brain on that idea of where this all began for us. But I wanted to ask you, I'm looking at my questions. I wanted to ask you about, okay, your favorite, or maybe one of the things that you're really into, because you're into a lot of different things as a therapist. So, what is one of your most favorite topics in therapy?
Topics, I feel like helping people to heal the ways that they learned to not be themselves, not hear themselves, not listen to themselves. Um, it's so much about
Hmm.
making a space where a person belongs exactly as they are, and even looking at maybe the maladaptive coping skills that they've developed, or as something that might have importance, and really just starting from a place of the way you are isn't wrong. Let's see what isn't working, because I feel like to survive, we so often hide away who we are. And I feel like kids have an incredible capacity for breaking a part of themselves off and tucking it away for
Mm,
safekeeping. So one of
mm.
my favorite things is to bring those parts back, bring those parts out into the open, allow them to come back into the body. Like the place they belong is here and now in their body, right? All those little parts of them. And so to bring them back, give them a home, which is the body, let them come home to themselves. And then let's see what life starts to look like once those missing parts are returned, you know?
I like that. I do. That I'll talk about, because I know you believe in this. Like it's almost like a way to categorize or to describe the process of trauma work. So any sort of trauma work,
Exactly.
those parts are naturally coming back, but you can look at them as like individual figures, like like it's
Yes.
a piece of you gave away, or
And it's, beyond trauma, so often it is a piece of the puzzle with anxiety, with depression, um, with yeah, I mean, when we get into like OCD, that's kind of looking at a different part. I do work with a lot of um, complex neurological diagnoses where there's a lot of comorbidity. But I think that the reason I end up with those cases is because I am doing something a little bit different. And so people are like, oh, she's doing something different. Everything else hasn't worked. Maybe we should try Erica. And so in the community that I'm in, I end up with some of those cases. But ultimately,
Hmm.
yeah, so that's like two different bodies of work. I will say, like when I'm working with that, it's a lot of increasing the person's ability to tolerate distress. It's increasing the capacity of the person to cope with all of the reactions that happen in the nervous system, in their, in their neurological system. And then the other half is like the stuff that I already mentioned. You know, can we allow the parts of ourselves that haven't been allowed to exist for whatever reason to be present in our life?
I love that. It makes me think of like if we only stand on one leg, we'd never walk. And so a lot of people
Yeah,
come in with this not owning all of their true potential, their true power, their resources within themselves, and then they wonder why they're anxious and depressed, and it's because they're not fully, they're not balanced. They don't have both legs on the ground. I don't know how else to say it.
absolutely. Yes. And Keisha, I will say this. I I do I'm getting certified to do integrative medicine for mental health.
Mm,
So it's taking into account what other aspects of your health are contributing to these symptoms. So it's looking at hormone imbalances, blood sugar imbalances, lifestyle, circadian rhythm, like all it's this huge like rainbow blueprint of your entire life. Because I do feel like, and I feel like we share this so much, we're just seeing a small snapshot when we think of it as just mental health, and like we're just like a head walking around,
mhm.
and so that has always fascinated me, and I'm excited to be learning more about that and to be able to increase my scope of practice so that I can address, like I'll send teenagers who don't exactly fit criteria for depression and anxiety, but clearly something's not okay. Oftentimes they're anemic, and the main test for anemia doesn't catch it. There's a different test where you have to test the storage of iron, which is called ferritin. And the pediatric clinic, like we have one big health center here, and the pediatrics department is like, we are seeing all of these menstruating teenagers with anemia and low ferritin, but it's just something that we don't look for. We don't have enough iron in our soil, so there's not enough iron in the food. So menstruating people of all ages, women of all ages, are typically anemic to some degree, but it shows up as anxiety and depression. It shows up as difficulty making decisions. It shows up as
Mm.
um, low energy with like anxiety. And so I always just think, let's rule this out if they start to show, and especially if it's a teenager who like doesn't eat, or a vegetarian teenager, which I get plenty of, but a teenager who just like doesn't eat food and like enough iron, you know.
So interesting. Well, that makes me think of the whole functional medicine piece that I like, where they're like talking
Yes,
about magnesium and like vitamin B. And if you have that MUTHFR gene, you know, your body's not
exactly.
functioning properly, but all the biological parts
Yes,
to our mental health, I guess. Yeah, there is definitely, I didn't
yes.
know, I wrote that stuff down about the anemia. I didn't know that piece.
Yeah, it's really been interesting, and it doesn't we still have to address the symptoms, you know, and counseling really helps, especially if someone's been feeling bad for a long time. But so often someone will get on iron, and I've had a few patients have to get iron infusions. It was so low. So they
Oh,
do IV iron at like a total
mhm.
allopathic Western medicine, you know, doctor's office. And they start to at least reach a point where they can then do the work in therapy. Whereas before that, they just couldn't even function, focus enough, have enough energy to do the work that therapy requires.
I like this because it's such a practical side to the body. So there's like, I call it the magical side, but more abstract ways of treating the body. But that's only one
Mhm.
piece of it. And then there's a biological way of treating the body. And I think you share the same opinion as me, but like, you can't just do one. If you have,
Right.
it's normally both.
Yes. Yes, like, I think about the 2 hemispheres of the brain, and one is very analytical and one is very abstract, like you're mentioning, and it's so helpful if we can do both. Well, and your work with EMDR, I mean, that's what we're doing. We're, like, stimulating,
Both sides.
talking about our emotions, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to learn more about that. Even though I'm certified, I know how to do it really good, but I don't know the science behind EMDR.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. And so when you do body work, what's your favorite process for doing body work?
Um, it's so funny because 'cause you're such a part of my road into this. There's an email I saved from you from so long ago. I don't even know if I was practicing yet. And you wrote to me about this experience of trusting your wise body. And I remember this line, it was like, what if she is wiser than, I can't remember, some, you know, wiser than my mind or something. And you had this experience where you had a gut feeling and it was accurate. And
Mhm.
it was so profound to me. Before I was a LPC, I got trained to teach mindfulness based stress reduction because I have a background in meditating, and I wanted to be able to teach people the tool to access their inner resources no matter what their circumstances were. So I was thinking like in jail, in like in a prison system, or in, you know, just any demographic or population that really could benefit from meditation. And that stemmed from being 15 years old in a chemical dependent halfway house and learning to meditate, and learning from one of the counselors to go into like my safe place, and it was like this wooded area inside myself, inside my imagination, and I used that safe place. I remember drawing a picture of it. I've been going there for 26 years, right? When I need to. It's grown, it's evolved, like it's a really magical place. Well, so lead in was that, and then learn to teach meditation. And so that all translated into the therapy room, guiding people in to their body through this. There's a practice called focusing that this guy Eugene Ginlin created. Keisha knows about it. He didn't create it, he observed it. So people who could go into the body and identify sensations, like there's a heavy block in my throat, or it feels like black tar in my gut, those people tended to have better outcomes in therapy. So the ones that could do this skill, therapy was had a better outcome. So then he kind of honed in on teaching the skill, and I learned that process. And it's actually the predecessor to somatic experiencing. So Peter Levine learned from Ginlin,
Mhm.
and once I learned that, it started to be one of the foundations of my process. So if someone can, we start with, let's identify the sensations that are in the body. And it can often take us to a memory, a feeling, an idea, a belief that's really problematic. And that's why the pain or the sensation, the discomfort is there. And then we start getting at it immediately. And I love that approach versus like talking our way. We may never land there, you know?
Well, and it seems like the mind has a story attached to the sensation, but there could be like 20 stories attached to
Yes.
one sensation. Whereas if you go with the sensation, it's a broader stroke. It's like the abstract has an easier way of hitting all those points related to the sensation. It's interesting because, you know, I do
Yes.
similar processes in here and they are weird. I will say, like, it's one of the weirder things I do, but the outcomes are so good with it.
Yes. And it's funny because sometimes I'll hold back because I'm worried that the person might think it's weird and will kind of not. I've stopped holding back because it's like I have a hammer on the table and over here I'm trying to get a nail in and I'm just like worried the person won't like the hammer. You know, I've started picking it up because I'll have like a teenager and they're like, I did not know what you were doing with that exercise, but that was really cool. You know, they like can do it. Kids can do it. It's so incredible and we'll actually get somewhere. You know, sometimes I've worked with people for like 2 years and I'm like, okay, let's just try that again. You know, like we tried it. They're like, I don't see anything. I don't feel anything. I don't know. So then, okay, I'm like, okay, let's try some other things. Well, we'll go back to it and they're like crying, they're having a release, they're really able to do it. We did this other work, they can now do it. And so I'm getting better about using it even though it's weird
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to trust the process and trust them, like trust their body knows, like their tissues, their body memory is holding the info that we're trying to access. And really it's like putting the trust into the person and into the process, you know.
I love that. Well, and they can do it on their own. This is not
Yes.
these type of body processes. It's not just like EMDR is just in my office, right? I mean, you can do some
Yes.
stuff on your own, but it's just different. And I think those types of body processes, when they're alone, they can do that. And you know,
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yes, me too. I tell people, let me teach you this so that you can use it in your life and let it change and evolve. You don't have to do it just one way. It's so open to creativity.
Mm.
Letting their creativity guide the process is key because then they're going to use it. People will tell me like, remember when we did this thing in your office, and they'll say what they did and I'm like, that's so funny because that's not what I took them through, but that's how they experienced it. It's their own process. It's so powerful that they can then take that home with them.
I like that. Yeah. And it is, I do think you get really creative with this stuff. Um, but it is, I think once they build a connection with their body, then they can follow whatever that creative process is, which is basically what we want. We want to work ourselves out of a job. I mean, that is our job.
Yes, 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 yes.
I know. So yeah. Is there any like other piece to that you think is important for people to know?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I feel like there are so many pieces to what we do. I know you do so many modalities, and so do I. And when I sit down with someone, I'm just like really open and I'm listening and I'm sort of looking for the right method to utilize with this person at this time. And something that I've noticed, I mean, I see it with you and you're an artist, you know, outside of this, you're an extremely creative person. You're For those of you that don't know, Keisha is a really talented artist. She's extremely creative. And I feel like that is what
Mhm.
we bring that can't be written in a book and said step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, because it's so based on our intuition And we have all these tools and all these modalities that we're trained in as clinicians, but then we're bringing this like
It's the art.
intuitive process, this art. Yes. Yes.
And that piece, I will say, there is like, and this again is one of these weird things. Like me and you talk a lot about this knowing that we have. That's not rational
Yeah.
or logical. We will think the same
Right.
thing and know the same things. And how do the two of us, we're not in front of
Yes.
each other, we're over the phone talking, get the same understanding of a situation. I mean, so there's this other knowledge out there that, I mean, we tap into it as therapists by watching people, by observing them, but also there's this unspoken world that I think that we are connected to.
Yes. Well, Keisha, yes. You asked like what else? Is there anything else? I was a Peace Corps volunteer, you know this, I lived in West Africa. I was exposed to a non-Western culture that really rocked my world. And prior to that, I had an elder who practiced Lakota, Sweat Lodge, and Vision Quest. Learned a lot from her. So I was kind of primed for this. And then living in West Africa with the Dagara people, I couldn't help but see how happy they were, how holistic they were, even though they literally had nothing, like dirt floors, no doors, no windows, very much living on the earth, connected to the earth, and was fortunate enough to be connected with a really amazing shaman, Elder Malidoma Some, who has walked the line of both worlds. He's got PhDs in different studies, but he's also a traditional practitioner of those ways. And I've been learning from him for many years now, what is it that we're missing with mental health? And I think that my connection to that has encouraged me to trust my intuition a little bit more, because they're like, traditional healers are always going with the dream they had the night before, the vision they're having right then and there. And it's so scary to admit that as a clinician, because there's so much stigma about that in our world, and especially in the West. But the more that I've embraced both the clinical training and that wisdom and knowledge, it's just awoken so much more in me as a provider.
I feel like it's made you more creative. It's fascinating as like a person
Yes.
watching, you know, because it is different than what I'm into, but there's so much, it's so much crossover. It's bizarre.
Yeah, so much crossover. My entire capstone project in grad school was why counselors need to learn from Indigenous healers, because they were like the original counselors.
Oh, I like
And
that.
so I've been thinking about this for so long, and it just keeps deepening and deepening. And I think that you and I talk about this sometimes when we're learning a new modality, and then we learn that it has roots in something Indigenous, and it makes so much sense because
Mhm.
it's so wide. It's like, how did this person figure this out? And then we learn that they lived with some group, or they studied, or they learned about this, and it's like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Well, and I think because my undergrad's anthropology, so that's where it starts to make sense to me, because I'm like, oh, we call it this word in this culture, it's called this word.
Yes.
So there's a whole dialogue, or like, well, however you want to, like all these terminology kind of words related to how they identify and understand it. And it's the same thing in our society, but we understand it in this way. And it sounds like you're saying too, but we get so black and white about it that we miss that other abstract, otherworldly, I don't even know what to call it, that other stuff.
Yes, absolutely, Keisha. And that is something that I've had to just kind of roll with. I don't know if you experienced this, but in grad school, we were all like, why do we have to diagnose? But as you get into the field, it's like, well, it's just a vocabulary. It's a language that we use to communicate with other providers. And sometimes I'll be sitting here and I'm like, wait, is this autism or is this ADHD? Like, I'm so confused. And then I have to remind myself, like, okay, it's a set of symptoms that overlap across these diagnoses. And I just need to pick the one that like fits the best. There is no, it's not definitive. It doesn't mean that like now you have this diagnosis, you don't have these other things, or you only have these things. And I do see clients getting really wrapped up in that. And it's like if we can loosen it a little and be like, this is just informing us. You do fit into this, but you fit into some other areas. It's not perfect. This language isn't perfect. It does not capture the complexity of human beings. It doesn't capture the complexity of our neurology and like our holistic humanness, you know? And so, yeah, I like kind of doing the dance in all the worlds. It really fascinates me to be like, oh, that's how they see it, and this is how we see it. And then to come into the middle.
I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like, it's the human part. It's not the
Yes.
science part. It's the human part, which is universal, which is across all cultures, which is probably where the grounding or a more balanced, wise-minded kind of way of living comes from. And the reason I bet the reason why body work is so good in our culture is that we have been lacking it as a whole. And so this return
Yes.
to it through yoga practices, through meditation, through these type of therapy approaches, it balances a person out more.
Absolutely. Yes. I feel like sometimes when I am teaching someone to dialogue with the body, that they could spend all of their time trying, like practicing that, because they've spent most of their life up here, just coming from here and not listening here.
Oh yeah. And you get really intense when you do it. I know that's making me think when you've done it with me, it is like, cause I got into focusing for a little while, man, it was hard not to use my mind to sense.
Yes.
I call it the felt
Yes.
sense, to like actually, it's like mind, do this. Let me focus on it. It was, yeah. It's a practice.
Yes. And we want an outcome, and so I think about it this way. The way that school sets us up, like just in general, K through 12, is not really helpful in living, because we show up, there's a right or wrong answer, we're given a number grade. None of that happens in real life, right? Like there isn't a right or wrong answer. We don't get a number grade. Most people walk around like, am I a good person? Am I doing okay? We don't have like, we're not sure. We're confused. And I see it the most when I get like a straight A student who's
Mhm.
an adult and is like overworking, overachieving, doesn't know how to measure themselves in the world because they're not in school anymore and there is no grading system. And that was how they knew they were okay. And starting to listen to the body in that way it's really incredibly hard. And we have to start with really small, sort of titrating, you
Mhm.
know, into the body. And I always tell people, okay, you might find out some info, but you don't have to act on it. It's just data collection. Like you're like, oh, my body told me I might be in the wrong career. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to like, and these
Mhm.
people are really impulsive, so it's not even a problem. But I'm like, let's just take the data, take the info, and sit with it and just say, oh, I hear you. I hear that you
Mhm.
don't like this job, or this career. It's exhausting. And then we just kind of sit with it and let it sink in and just see what lands.
That's like that focusing story. It's my favorite, maybe one of my favorite stories of all time, where you go to that, like, I don't know, I guess the story goes, the girl sent a part of herself away. It was like a woman, maybe she sent a part of herself away. And it was her dog. So she had a dog. This is the story. She had a dog, and it was like bad, and maybe it peed in the house and her parents didn't like it. So they made it go away. And so the dog's gone. She's an adult. She's walking by this like trail and she sees this tattered dog. It's a part of herself, right? And it's like hidden in the darkness. It's scared to come out because it was cast away so long ago. But she sees that it's her dog and she loved the dog, right? So she sits outside and she waits patiently. This story just moves me so much. And she waits patiently outside, watches the dog. So it'll come out eventually. And then eventually it lets her pet it, but she has to be really patient. That's what focusing is, right? And then eventually it starts to be its old self and it's playful and it's beautiful and it goes home with her. But it's a long process of calling that part
Yes.
out, of reclaiming it. And a lot of times we're
Yes.
just sitting, waiting, and watching. I don't know. I love that story.
Yes, yes. I mean, think about if there was a, well, like if there was a person in your life that you ignored for like 40 years, and then you realize they're there and you're like, tell me what you need, like now, tell me, we do have to be patient because sometimes that part of us is like, I don't even know how to communicate that, or it doesn't trust us yet, you know? It's like it really is a relationship. And I know when I was doing my own healing, I had to constantly put the part of me that had been in charge of keeping me safe and running the show, that had become very like much a commander, very demanding. It was like it didn't care if I was tired, it wasn't going to let me sleep until I got the project done or got the paper done or got the good grade. It was very, very demanding of my time and energy, and not ever willing to listen to my actual physical needs. I mean, Keisha, like I used to be the person that Erica doesn't need sleep, but that wasn't real. I realized later. I'm in a human body like everybody else. Healing that has been such an incredible journey, but it took continuous taking that part of me and saying, "Oh, I know you're trying to keep me safe and you don't want me to fail, but I need you to come and take a nap right now. You get to lay in this hammock and be on vacation, and this actual other part of me is going to run the show." And like it just was such a young part of me, and it needed to really, really be healed.
That's awesome. I like that. I like that. I know we're probably running out of time now. Is there
Yes.
anything else that you want to share?
I love our conversations. I so appreciate this time with you. And I love something that you do that I feel like makes you such an incredible counselor. And you do it with me on the phone. You're always like, that's so interesting. And you just leave this beautiful space for things to grow and unfold. And my teacher, Malidoma, does that as well. And I just want to acknowledge that in you. It's such a beautiful part of what you do.
No, thank you, Erica. It's so sweet. That's so sweet. But I do think that I really am curious. Like it is
You are. Yeah, you
totally
totally are.
interesting.
Yes, I know. It's like such a cool part of you. Like I just love that part of you. I appreciate it. It makes these conversations possible too.
Yes, yes. And we're both nerds in the same sort of way. We get excited about something and people are like, that might not be interesting. And we're like, oh God, it's so interesting. 2 hours on the phone. So is there anything else? I know you're doing a mindfulness class.
Yeah, so January 7th, 2022, I am starting an online mindfulness-based stress reduction class. We meet on Friday nights, 5:30 to 8 for 8 weeks. I teach it every January, but this year I'm going online, and it is such an incredible way to restore yourself during the winter, um, decompress at the end of the week, and then I love it because it sets you up for really amazing behavior, like healthy habits and behavior change that maybe we've got this like hangover, this emotional hangover, this physical hangover from the holidays. We get to restore, and then we enter spring in a really healthy state. And so yeah, if I'm sure we can link it here. There's info on the webpage, and yeah.
I love you.
Oh, and for anyone listening, there's a discount of 20% off, Village 20. We can put that in there.
Oh,
So they
awesome.
can get 20% off. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Erica. We'll do more of these, but this is just the first.
Thank you, Keisha.
Bye.